Welcome, 10th graders, to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today. If you've ever looked at a map of Europe and kind of wondered how all those distinct countries actually came to be, well, you're in the exact right place. Today we're going to unpack one of the absolute most crucial chapters for your history exam, the rise of nationalism in Europe. We're going to explore exactly how the modern world as we know it today was literally born out of revolutions, romantic dreams, and shattered empires. Let's dive in. Okay, real quick, here's our roadmap for today. We're starting with the early dreams of nation-states, then moving through the explosive French Revolution, breaking down the ideology of liberal nationalism, and tracing the revolts all the way to the Balkans. Finally, we'll wrap the whole shebang up with a rapid-fire revision and a practice test to make sure you're totally ready. Section 1. The Dream of Nation-States. Imagining a world without kings. So, I want you to imagine a world that's entirely ruled by kings, emperors, and absolute monarchs. That was Europe in the early 19th century. But in 1848, a single spark of imagination changed everything. A French artist named Frédéric Sorrieu visualized this massive dream of a world made up of what he called democratic and social republics. In his vision, the peoples of the world were grouped as distinct nations, proudly identified by their own flags and national costumes, marching confidently right past the shattered, ruined walls of royal castles. It's like a giant puzzle finally coming together. Now, you're going to need to know some key vocabulary for your exam, so let's lock this in. First up, absolutist. Remember those shattered castle remains from Sorrieu's dream? Those represent absolutist institutions. An absolutist government is a monarchical system with absolutely zero restraints on its power. It's highly centralized, fiercely militarized, and incredibly repressive. It's exactly the kind of nightmare the people were trying to march away from. Our next crucial vocabulary word is utopian. Sorrieu's 1848 dream of this perfectly harmonious world of united democratic nations was purely utopian. And what does that mean? A utopian vision is a society so ideal, so perfect, but it's highly unlikely to actually exist in reality. I mean, at that time, a united Germany or a united Italy didn't even exist on the map. They were just a messy patchwork of divided kingdoms. The idea of them becoming true nation-states was just a beautiful utopian hope. So you might be wondering, if a nation wasn't just a kingdom, what was it? Well, in 1882, the French philosopher Ernst Renan gave a really famous lecture tackling exactly this. He totally argued against the idea that a nation is just a group of people who speak the same language or share a race. Instead, he said a nation is built on a heroic past, shared sacrifices, great deeds, and large-scale solidarity. He beautifully called its very existence a daily plebiscite. And that brings us to our third key definition, plebiscite. A plebiscite is simply a direct vote where all the people of a region are asked to accept or reject a proposal. Renan strongly believed that a province is essentially just its inhabitants, and a nation absolutely requires the daily consent of its people. Pretty revolutionary idea for the time, right? Right, moving on to Section 2, the French Revolution, the spark that lit Europe. So how did this whole dream of nations and citizen consent actually get off the ground? To answer that, we've got to jump back in time to 1789, which is the very first clear expression of nationalism in Europe. The French revolutionaries knew they couldn't just overthrow the king and call it a day. They had to actively forge a brand new collective identity. Step 1, they introduced the ideas of la patrie, meaning the fatherland, and les citoyens, the citizen. This created a united community with equal rights. Step 2, they completely ditched the old royal standard for a crisp new tricolor flag. And step 3, they literally transferred sovereignty to the people by establishing a national assembly and formulating uniform laws for everyone. Chronologically, this creates a really fascinating ripple effect. The revolution kicks off in 1789. By the 1790s, French armies are carrying this radical idea of nationalism abroad. But then comes a massive twist. Napoleon Bonaparte takes over. He destroys democracy in France, but paradoxically exports its administrative efficiency across Europe. He introduces his famous civil code in 1804. But eventually, his empire overstretches, leading to his fall and the highly conservative Vienna settlement from 1814 to 1815. Let's look a bit closer at that 1804 Civil Code, better known as the Napoleonic Code. Because, spoiler alert, this is a massive exam topic. What did Napoleon actually do? Well, first, he established equality before the law, totally doing away with special privileges based on birth. Second, he firmly secured the right to property. And third, across all the territories he conquered, he abolished the outdated feudal system and freed peasants from serfdom. He made the administrative system incredibly rational and efficient. Section 3. What is liberal nationalism? The battle of ideologies. We've seen how France evolved, but what about the rest of Europe in the 19th century? As industrialization grew, these new educated middle classes emerged, and they were hungry for change. And this right here illustrates the central push and pull of the entire 19th century. On one side, we have liberalism, derived from the Latin root liber, meaning free. The new middle classes demanded individual freedom, government by consent, and free markets. On the completely competing side, we have conservatism. After Napoleon's defeat in 1815, European governments basically wanted to hit the rewind button. They wanted to restore monarchies, traditional institutions, and autocratic rule, with zero pesky constitutions getting in their way. Section 4. Revolutions and the Balkans. The explosive results of nationalism. You can probably guess what happens when highly conservative regimes try to violently suppress liberal nationalist demands, right? You get pushback. And I mean massive pushback. Time for a quick stop and think moment to actively recall this for your test. What exactly sparked the July Revolution of 1830 in France? Think back to those conservative kings who were restored to power after Napoleon. How do you think the liberal middle classes reacted to them? And here is the answer. The Bourbon kings who had been restored to power were violently overthrown by liberal revolutionaries. And guys, this wasn't just a French event. It spread like wildfire. As the Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich famously remarked, when France sneezes, the rest of Europe catches cold. And he hit the nail on the head. The July Revolution in Paris immediately sparked an uprising in Brussels, which literally led to Belgium breaking away from the Netherlands. Ideas really are contagious. This domino effect actually started even earlier, with the Greek struggle for independence in 1821 against the Ottoman Empire. Then, boom, the 1830 July Revolution. By 1848, full-blown revolutions were sweeping across Europe, leading to the massive movements that would ultimately unify Germany and Italy into the modern nations we know today. But tragically, by 1914, this beautiful utopian dream of nationalism twists into something much, much darker. And that darkest turn happened in a region called the Balkans. Why was it such a powder keg? First, it had incredible geographical and ethnic variation, broadly inhabited by peoples known as the Slavs. Second, they were largely under the control of the rapidly disintegrating Ottoman Empire. It was falling apart. And third, the spread of explosive romantic nationalism meant every single group wanted their own independent territory. This intense, fiery rivalry eventually dragged the major European powers into a devastating global conflict. Section 5. Final chapter revision. Key takeaways for the exam. Okay, we've covered the core narrative of the entire chapter. Now let's do a rapid-fire review to really lock these essential concepts into your long-term memory. If you remember absolutely nothing else, you must memorize these anchor dates for the birth of the modern nation-state. 1789, the French Revolution sparks the idea. 1804, the Napoleonic Code spreads administrative equality. 1814 to 1815, the conservative Vienna settlement tries to turn back the clock. And 1848, the great liberal revolts sweep Europe, pushing that utopian dream closer to reality. Got it? Awesome. Section 6, Q&A and practice test. Let's test your knowledge. You know the timeline, you know the concepts, now it's time to prove it. Let's look at a classic high-frequency exam question you are very likely to see. Explain the changes Napoleon introduced to make the administrative system more efficient in his territories. Think back to the civil code we discussed a few minutes ago. How did he deal with birth privileges? What about property? The feudal system? Go ahead and mentally formulate your answer. Let's see how you did. Here is the perfect step-by-step model answer. First, you absolutely must mention the 1804 Napoleonic Code by name. Then, clearly hit these 4 key points. He removed all privileges based on birth, he established equality before the law, he firmly secured the right to property, and he completely abolished the feudal system, freeing peasants from serfdom. Structure your answer exactly like this, and you are going to ace that question for sure. We're going to leave off today with a final, slightly provocative thought. It's kind of the great irony of this entire chapter. Nationalism began in 1789 and 1848 as a beautiful utopian dream for liberty and democratic republics. But as it aligned with imperialism in the Balkans, did it actually guarantee that liberty, or did it inevitably lead to the catastrophic disasters of the First World War in 1914? Think critically about that as you continue to study. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. You've been fantastic, and good luck with your exam preparations.